And the mission today is really just to get a solid grasp on the roots of dystopia.
So you walk away with, hopefully, a sharper way of looking at these stories. And yeah, here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, it often starts with what looks like a simple definition, right? Our sources basically say a dystopia is a community or society that is undesirable or frightening. Simple as that.
Design is the opposite of utopia.
The conceptual opposite, exactly.
Yeah. The bad place. But okay, the name itself, dystopia, it goes deep, doesn't it? Like all the way back to ancient Greek.
It does. It's built from two Greek bits.
Yeah.
Deus, which means bad, but it can also mean, difficult, ill, unfortunate.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
tupos, which just means place. So yeah, literally a bad place.
That dis prefix adds a little something extra, though, doesn't it? It's not just not good. It's specifically like ill-fated or difficult.
Precisely. And there were other words floating around, too. The sources mentioned them.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Like kakotopia,
Mhm.
or sometimes spelled kakotopia.
Yeah.
And occasionally just, anti-utopia.
Kakotopia. Okay, we'll circle back to that one.
They all kind of capture that idea of a society gone wrong.
Mhm.
But to really get dystopia, you first have to understand its more famous sibling, utopia.
Right, Utopia, the good place. The
Well-
term coined by Sir Thomas More.
That's the one.
Oh.
Way back in 1516, his book Utopia laid out this vision, this blueprint almost, for an ideal society. Minimal crime, violence, poverty. You get the picture.
Perfection. But even that word utopia, it's kind of tricky right from the get-go, isn't it?
How so?
Well, the sources point out it might come from the Greek ub, meaning not.
Making no place.
It could come from u, meaning good.
Making it good place.
So which is it? Is it nowhere or is it good?
And that ambiguity is fascinating because it's baked in from the very beginning. Is the ideal society actually achievable, a good place? Or is it fundamentally a no place, something that can't exist?
That little linguistic twist tells you so much right at the source. The ideal might be inherently impossible.
And Amor wrote this nearly 500 years ago.
Mhm.
You have to think about the context, too, which the sources highlight.
Right, set in the New World, the Americas, this was ages before the Mayflower even sailed. Back when European monarchs ruled by divine right.
Exactly. And there's a really sharp point made in our materials.
Yeah.
Given More was, serving an absolute monarch, King Henry VIII,
Mhm.
and was deeply devoted to the Catholic Pope.
Yeah.
Maybe his utopia isn't meant to be taken as a serious proposal for how to run things.
Ah, you mean it could be read more like satire?
Social satire, yeah. A kind of coded critique of the world he actually lived in.
That makes a lot of sense. Even the perfect place was maybe being used to point out real-world flaws.
Which makes it maybe less surprising that the term for the bad place eventually showed up. And not first in fiction, but actually as a political insult.
Wait, hang on. A political insult. Seriously.
Mhm.
So the word dystopia, it didn't start out describing places like in 1984 or Brave New World.
Apparently not, according
Yeah.
to our sources. John Stuart Mill seems to get the credit for first using dystopia specifically as the opposite of utopia.
John Stuart Mill, the philosopher.
The very same. And the context was an 1868 speech in Parliament.
Right.
He literally just took More's topia ending and stuck the dis prefix on the front.
Wow. Okay, so what was he talking about?
He was actually criticizing the government's Irish land policy at the time.
No.
Yeah, he argued that the policy supporters ought rather to be called dystopians or kakotopians. He said their ideas were basically too bad to be practicable.
That's incredible. So he wasn't talking about some imagined future hellscape. He was calling a current government policy dystopian.
Essentially, yes.
Yes.
Too bad to even work in reality.
And he mentioned kakotopians there, too. You said that word earlier. The sources say kakotopia or kakotopia was actually suggested even before Mill used dystopia.
That's right. Way back in 1818 by Jeremy Bentham, another philosopher.
Okay, Bentham. And what's the difference there? Kakotopia versus dystopia?
Well, it comes down to the Greek root again. Bentham used kwaikos, kakos, which leans more towards bad in the sense of evil or wicked.
Whereas dys was more about difficulty or misfortune.
Exactly. So kakos perhaps suggests something more actively malicious, more morally corrupt.
Interesting. So Bentham saw kakotopia as the imagined seat of the worst government. A place that's bad because it's run by wicked people, perhaps.
That seems to be the implication, yeah. A true opposite to the ideal government. While dystopia ended up being the term that stuck, that subtle difference in meaning is still there.
It is interesting that dystopia won out, although, funnily enough, one of our sources mentions Anthony Burgess.
The author of A Clockwork Orange.
Yeah. Apparently, he actually preferred using kakotopia, specifically when talking about Orwell's 1984.
Oh, really?
He just felt, and this is a quote, that kakotopia simply sounds worse than dystopia.
Huh. Well, maybe he was onto something. If kakos means evil or wicked, perhaps he felt that better captured the specific kind of badness in 1984. You know, the deliberate cruelty, the thought police, Big Brother.
Yeah, it's not just unfortunate circumstances, it's actively malevolent.
Right, an actively wicked system rather than just a difficult or dysfunctional one. That nuance is quite telling.
It really adds another layer, doesn't it? Okay, so moving towards more contemporary thinking, Margaret Atwood comes up in the sources. Big name in this area.
Absolutely, and she coined her own term.
Which is?
Utopia, US-topia.
Dystopia, right, like a mashup of utopia and dystopia.
Exactly. Her idea is that in many of these imagined worlds, especially ones that resonate today, the perfect society and the nightmare society aren't really separate things. They sort of contain each other. Each one holds a hidden version of the other.
Like two sides of the same coin.
In a way, yeah. And she made this really powerful point about why she chose that name, Utopia, specifically using the word us.
Us, as in people.
As in us, humanity. She says it implies these worlds, good or bad, ultimately reflect our own mistakes as human beings.
Wow. Okay, that hits differently.
It does. It brings it right back to us. It's not just about some abstract political system failing or technology running rampant. It's rooted in our own actions, our own nature. The potential for things to go wrong is within us.
So let's try and connect all this. We've got the literal meanings, bad place, difficult place, maybe even wicked place. We've got the historical context, More's potential satire, Mill's political insult, Atwood's Dystopia. How does knowing all this help when we look at classic dystopian fiction, like Brave New World, 1984, Fahrenheit 451?
Well, think about the common features, the sources list for these stories.
Yeah.
Dehumanization, tyrannical governments, environmental collapse, tech control.
Yeah.
Understanding the etymology gives you a frame. These aren't just random bad things. They are the ways a place becomes that dystopia, that frightening, undesirable society. They embody the badness.
And knowing the history adds depth, right? Like when you read 1984, knowing dystopia was first used to call a real policy too bad to be practicable, or that kakotopia implies active wickedness.
You can see how Orwell's Oceania fits that mold perfectly. It is the worst government, actively, maliciously bad, just like Bentham's kakotopia might suggest.
Okay, what about Brave New World? That one feels different.
It does. On the surface, it almost presents itself as a kind of utopia, doesn't it? Everyone's superficially happy, stable, no messy emotions.
Yeah, the good place, in a shallow way.
But the control, the conditioning, the loss of humanity underneath, that reveals the deep the difficult, the unfortunate reality hidden beneath the engineered happiness. It shows how striving for one kind of perfection, comfort, stability can lead straight into a different kind of bad place.
So the pursuit of utopia creates its own dystopia?
Potentially, yes. Or look at Fahrenheit 451. That society feels like a bad place, created less by an iron fist, like in 1984.
And more by, what? Apathy?
Apathy, passive consumption, fear of complex ideas, loss of connection. It's a different flavor of bad, maybe closer to that difficult or unfortunate sense of brought about by the people themselves, echoing Atwood's us.
So each story explores a particular kind of bad place, and the language, the history we've talked about gives us clues. Are we looking at a corrupted ideal, a fundamentally wicked system, an unfortunate outcome, or something that comes directly from, well, us?
Exactly. It moves beyond just labeling it a bad future, and helps you ask what kind of bad and why. It sharpens the critique.
It definitely gives you a richer way to engage with these texts, spotting those echoes.
Absolutely. You start thinking about what specific anxiety about society or human nature the author is really zooming in on as the root of the badness.
So pulling it all together, what's the big takeaway here? This whole dive into the definition, the etymology of dystopia, it really shows how tied up the idea of a bad place is with the idea of a good place.
They're deeply intertwined.
Yeah.
And the history of the words themselves, utopia, dystopia, kakotopia, it maps out this long-running human argument, this grappling with how to build ideal societies.
And the simultaneous fear of how badly that can go wrong.
Right. From Moore's Island, which might have been a joke all along, to Mill using dystopia as a political weapon, to Atwood reminding us it might all stem from us, the language carries the weight of those anxieties.
Which leaves us with a pretty important question, doesn't it? Especially thinking back to the origins of utopia itself, meaning maybe no place, maybe good place.
Mm-hmm.
Does the very act of trying to create perfection, the good place, somehow always contain the seeds of its opposite? Is the nightmare, the dystopia, sort of latent in the dream of utopia?
That's definitely something to chew on. Is the bad place an inevitable shadow of the good place, or perhaps even the no place?
Something for you to think about next time you encounter one of these worlds, whether it's in a book, a film, or even discussions about our own society.